Skoda Superb, best in next class. Co-powered by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist.
French President Emmanuel Macron's war on radical Islam is intensifying. He has taken some tough measures. Dozens of raids have been conducted, a mosque was shut down, a new law is being brought in to crack down on Islamist extremism. Now, a Pakistani imam in France has been jailed and banned by France for propagating terror. When Imran Khan decided to pick a fight with Emmanuel Macron over this crackdown on Islamist extremism, little did he know how badly this campaign will backfire. Paris is now hitting back at Islamabad through diplomatic actions that also mean a huge setback for Pakistan military. On Gravitas tonight, we tell you more about the hefty price that Islamabad is paying for its campaign against Paris, and how this is a make-or-break moment for Emmanuel Macron as he walks a tightrope and deals with criticism both at home and abroad. I am Molly Gambhir. Also on the show for you tonight, India is drawing its neighbors closer. In the last 7 days, India's topmost representatives have traveled to 5 countries in a bid to counter China's aggression. India is reaching out to its immediate and extended neighbors and strengthening its strategic backyard. We decode the significance of these visits. Donald Trump is finally gearing up to leave the White House. He might have lost, but he is not going anywhere. What next for Donald Trump? We explore. After Brexit, the UK could be staring at another separation. Scotland wants to part ways. In fact, it wants a Scottish independence referendum to be held as soon as the British Parliament's next term begins next year. Will the UK give in? We examine. A pig fight inside the Taiwan parliament is making headlines. US pork finds itself at the center of the clashes between lawmakers there. It is a Gravitas special report. The world is bidding a tearful goodbye to one of the world's greatest footballers. A special tribute to Diego Maradona coming up. But first, as always, Gravitas Global Headlines.
In news confirmed by Iran's defense ministry, Iranian nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh has been assassinated east of Tehran. Known as the father of Iran's nuclear program, Fakhrizadeh headed Iran's nuclear weapons project and was also a senior officer in Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps. Reportedly, Iran's Revolutionary Guards commander has promised to avenge the killing of the country's top nuclear scientist. The Ethiopian military is all set for its final phase of an offensive in the northern Tigray region, according to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. This after an ultimatum expired for Tigrayan forces to surrender. UN has warned about consequences of not conserving water and tackling climate crisis. Data shows that water shortages are now affecting more than 3 billion people around the world, as the amount of fresh water available for each person has plunged by a fifth over 2 decades. India's economy has officially slipped into recession for the first time ever, with 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, compounded further by the coronavirus crisis. 7.5% contraction has been recorded in the second quarter of financial year 2020 to 2021. China will impose anti-dumping measures on Australian wine in escalating tensions between Beijing and Canberra. Importers of Australian wine will now have to pay whopping tariffs starting Saturday.
Clearly, we think it is unjustified and without evidence to back it up.
Australia has vowed to defend its wine industry from China tariffs via the World Trade Organization. More than 150 criminal cases involving 226 individuals have been launched by Saudi Arabia's Control and Anti-Corruption Authority. Legal proceedings against them are underway. Cases include a number of officers and civil servants who are being investigated for suspicious financial dealings, committing bribery, abusing influence, and squandering public money to achieve illicit financial gains amounting to more than $328 million.
Det har været fødselsdag for dem, og det er det også for mig.
Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen broke down after visiting a mink farm. This month, the Danish government had ordered culling all 17 million mink in the country to curb this spread of the coronavirus, which it later admitted was illegal. European nations are at odds over plan to ban Christmas ski holidays amid the pandemic, while Germany, Italy and France are in favor of resort closures. Australia and Switzerland fear economic damage and decide to keep them open. Australia have drawn first blood in the ODI series against India with a comprehensive 66-run victory at the Sydney Cricket Ground. It was the Aussies' first home game since the pandemic, and they were in devastating mood with the bat, putting up a mammoth 374 for 6, courtesy of centuries from skipper Aaron Finch and Stephen Smith. The Indians got off to a decent start, but 4 quick wickets ended their challenge. Hardik Pandya scored 90 to salvage some pride for the visitors, as they finished at 308 for 8. Arsenal are through to the last 32 of the Europa League after a comfortable 3-0 win over Norwegian side Molde. Club record signing Nicola Pepe put his recent worries behind with a brilliant opener. Reece Nelson and Folarin Balogun were also on the score sheet as the Gunners kept up their perfect record in this season's competition. Joining the North Londoners in the knockout stages are Premier League rivals Leicester City. Jamie Vardy scored in the stoppage time to salvage a 3-3 draw against Sporting Braga in Portugal.
After the deadly stabbing in Nice, French President Emmanuel Macron had travelled to the city. Appearing before the press, he had said France is under attack. That day, Macron did not hesitate, just like the attack in Paris. He called the stabbings in Nice an act of Islamist terrorism. Macron said France will not give in to terror. His reaction has been swift and decisive. Dozens of raids have been conducted. A mosque was shut down. A new law is being brought in to crack down on Islamist extremism. Today, France has taken another bold step. A Pakistani imam has been jailed and banned by France. Why? Because he was using TikTok to propagate terror. This is that man. His name is Luqman Haider, a Pakistani who has been sentenced to 18 months in jail. He had arrived in France back in 2015. Occasionally, he officiated as the imam at a mosque in Villers-le-Bel. This is a commune in the northern suburbs of Paris. Luqman Haider is a terror apologist. He put out 3 videos on TikTok. In the first video, he talked about the Charlie Hebdo cartoon, saying Muslim worshippers are willing to sacrifice themselves for the Prophet. In the second video, he spoke of attacking non-Muslims and disbelievers and sending them to hell, quote unquote. The final video, shared on the 25th of September, was a tribute for the terrorist who wounded 4 in a knife attack outside the former offices of Charlie Hebdo. This had happened back in September. That terrorist was a Pakistani national too. The imam called him a brave man. France now has zero tolerance for such imams. A case was filed at a local court which found the imam guilty and sentenced him to 18 months in jail. And now, because of this conviction, he can no longer stay in France. The Imam will have to go back to Pakistan.
From the moment you find him guilty on the 25th September, given that he has no rights to be in France with 2 obligations to leave the territory, it seems reasonable both for public opinion, I think, and for him to understand as well.
The tough stand against foreign imams is not new. While France has laws in place to punish such imams, the Macron government wants to implement its own rule book. Back in February, well before the recent terror attacks, the French president had announced new measures. He had taken some steps towards ending a program that allowed foreign countries to send imams and teachers to France. Back then, Macron had said his government wants to combat foreign interference in how Islam is practiced and the way religious institutions are organized.
Aujourd'hui, on a, je le disais, 300 imams détachés.
Today, there are 300 imams who were sent to France every year. Those who arrived in 2020 will be the last cohort of such volume to come, and we will gradually stop allowing new ones and let the last cohort of imams stay until their tenures end, with a dialogue and improved conditions. Ending what is called consular Islam is extremely important in order to be able to curb foreign influence and ensure that everyone fully abides by the laws of the Republic with a common framework.
Et là aussi permettre.
Note those words, curb foreign influence. Macron wants to stop importing imams because he does not want foreign powers to dictate the rules of Islam in France. Exactly what Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey and Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan tried to do by whipping up passions against France through a campaign of hate against Macron. Protests had broken out across Islamic countries, but Pakistan saw the most vicious kind of protest. In Islamabad, inside a madrasa, a teacher beheaded an effigy of Emmanuel Macron in front of children. Reportedly, the imam punished in France used to teach children between 6 and 11 years of age. He shared similar beliefs as this teacher in Islamabad. This is what France is fighting: extremist teachers who are radicalizing young and impressionable minds. France is not stopping at radical imams. It has taken a series of retaliatory measures against Pakistan. This includes Pakistan's military establishment. Our next report tells you more.
If Pakistan thought it could get away with this blunder, it was wrong. Imran Khan is paying a hefty price for this tweet. It had claimed that Macron is treating Muslims like Nazis had treated Jews. Mazari deleted her tweet, but the damage was done. The anger in France was boiling over. To blame everything on a tweet would be unfair, because Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan was the one who decided to pick a fight with France. But Mazari's statement only made the situation worse. Paris is now hitting back at Islamabad.
D'où qu'ils viennent.
France will not upgrade Pakistan's fleet of Mirage fighter jets, an air defense system, and the Augusta 90B class submarines. Reportedly, France has sent a message to Qatar too, asking them to not allow Pakistani origin technicians to work on the Rafale jets. If that wasn't enough, France will now put asylum requests from Pakistan under detailed scrutiny. Pakistan's decision to take on France seems to have come with a hefty price tag. It all began when Imran Khan sided with Turkey's Recep Tayyip Erdogan and accused the French president of attacking Islam. Erdogan, alongside Imran Khan and Mahathir Mohamad, added fuel to the fire against France. Their statements added to the outrage against France in the Muslim world, leading to violent rallies across major Islamic countries. There were protests in Pakistan too, where protesters burned effigies of Macron and desecrated the French flag. Extremists and radicals took to the streets with large crowds. They tried to target the French embassy in Islamabad. More recently, Islamabad was held hostage by Islamists. Led by the far-right Islamic political party, the Tehreek-e-Labbaik, its supporters forced the Imran Khan government to make concessions. Pakistani ministers signed an agreement promising to evict the French ambassador to Pakistan and a boycott of French goods at the government level. The Pakistan Prime Minister has lost control of his own anti-France campaign, with Islamists dictating the terms of engagement with France at home, and France responding with diplomatic actions. Imran Khan now finds himself caught between a rock and a hard place. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
For Emmanuel Macron, this is a make or break moment. He is standing at a crucial juncture. Let me tell you why I say that. When Macron came to power in 2017, he promised to quote-unquote transform, not reform France. He called for an international roadmap to fight terrorism. He promised zero tolerance for crimes. Macron is France's youngest president. And 3 years into office, he has been dealing with multiple challenges. Macron is fighting criticism at home and abroad. Thousands of miles from Paris, there are people burning the president's effigies, stepping on his photos, brandishing swords, calling for the boycott of French goods. In Pakistan, things spiraled out of control, like we told you. The government bowed down to Islamists and agreed to have the French envoy leave the country. Macron has suddenly become one of the world's most controversial leaders. Do you know how he got here? By standing up for the French Constitution, by standing up for sovereignty, by standing up for the people of France and their freedom of expression, by cracking down on terror and calling out political Islam. And in doing so, he became one of the most hated leaders in the Muslim world. Of course, there are countries standing by Macron as he fights radicalism, but there are also countries like Pakistan, leaders like Imran Khan, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Malaysia's Mahathir Mohamad, who are trying to build a chorus against Macron. And Macron's troubles do not end there. Let me now show you what's happening at home in France. In Marseille, people are protesting the Wuhan virus lockdown measures. The restaurant owners want the Macron government to allow the businesses to reopen. Gym owners want their gyms to reopen. Nightclub owners also have the same demand.
Laissez-nous! Laissez-nous! Regardez les documents de l'INSEE, il se dit qu'en France.
This is scam. Here too, people are unhappy with the Macron government.
We've been closed since October 15th. There is no one around anymore. We've scheduled to open on April 1st, because now it is not worth it. You just sell 2 rooms. Money will just go down the drain. So it's unfortunate. Cannes runs on the conventions. We haven't had a convention this year. It runs on national travel and flights.
Similar sentiments are being echoed across France, where restrictions have been implemented to deal with the impact of the second wave of the Wuhan virus. How is any of this Macron's fault? After Macron's government proposed a security law which would make publishing images of police officers a criminal offense, things have gotten worse for him. The government says the proposal is intended to protect police officials. Critics say it endangers journalists and observers who take photos and capture videos of the police conduct during demonstrations. France is headed for a presidential election in 2022. Macron won 66% of the French votes in 2017. A year into office, he faced the Yellow Vest protests. Macron's approval rating fell to 29%. Throw in the pandemic and the humanitarian crisis it brought along. Add to that the global economic crisis, the protests against Macron at home and abroad. Where do you think his approval ratings stand now? A poll conducted in October found 63% of people disapproved of Macron. When Macron came to office in 2017, he promised to transform France and the French police system. Like I mentioned earlier, he promised to uphold secularism and fight terrorism. Aren't his actions in line with those promises? Isn't that what France voted for? That said, there is a thin line between fighting radicalism and being hateful. There is also a thin line between being a tough leader and disregarding people's rights. Macron is walking that tightrope. This is his make or break moment. If Macron manages to really turn things around, he will set an example for not just Europe, but for the entire world. If he slips, he loses his office. And like I said, there is no midway. In the last 7 days, India's topmost representatives have travelled to the immediate and extended neighbourhood. The Indian External Affairs Minister is in West Asia, the Indian Foreign Secretary is in Nepal, and the Indian National Security Advisor is now in Sri Lanka. The significance of these high-profile visits is immense. New Delhi is drawing its neighbours closer to counter China's aggression. Our next report tells you how India is strengthening its strategic backyard.
The Indian External Affairs Minister is in West Asia. The Indian Foreign Secretary is in Nepal.
We have a very strong relationship. Our endeavor will be to see how we can take that relationship forward. I would like to thank the Government of Nepal, Foreign Secretary, for the warm hospitality extended to us. We have some very good meetings ahead of us, and we will look forward to how that goes.
And now the Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval is in Sri Lanka. Earlier today he met the President of Sri Lanka, Gotabaya Rajapaksa. New Delhi is drawing its neighbors closer to counter China's ongoing belligerence. In the last 7 days, India's topmost representatives have traveled to 5 countries. The high-profile visits are being seen as an effort to wrest back the waning regional influence from China. Reports indicate the Ladakh border standoff is likely to extend through the winter. In the face of China's unending unilateralism, India is advancing bilateral ties with countries where the security interests of both sides converge. And at the same time, it is strengthening security cooperation with its partners in West Asia. NSA Ajit Doval has landed in Colombo for a trilateral meeting on maritime security cooperation with Sri Lanka and the Maldives. This is the 4th edition and is taking place after 6 long years. The high-level engagement will be attended by the Maldivian Defense Minister Maria Didi and the Sri Lankan Defense Secretary Kamal Gunaratne. Mauritius and Seychelles will be observing the trilateral meet. On the agenda will be cooperation and collective action on security issues in the Indian Ocean region, from the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka to a friendship bridge in the Maldives. China has been vying for greater control in the region. The maritime dialogue will be aimed at rehauling India's traditional sphere of influence. Indian Foreign Secretary Harsh Vardhan Shringla is on a 2-day visit to Kathmandu. On day 1 of his visit, he met the top political leadership of the Himalayan Republic. This includes President Bidya Devi Bhandari and Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. On the 2nd day of his visit, Harshvardhan Shringla inaugurated 3 schools in the Gorkha district built by India. India has also constructed 46,000 homes in the Gorkha and Nuwakot districts of Nepal. The projects are aimed at countering China's Belt and Road Initiative. In West Asia, India is vying for a greater strategic role. As a part of his West Asia tour, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has traveled to Bahrain and UAE and is now visiting Seychelles. The primary goal of these visits is securing India's interests in the Gulf. New Delhi is working towards protecting the interests of 8 million Indians living and working in the region. At the same time, big-ticket investments are being made to generate income, and India is looking to offer investment opportunities. Allies in the Gulf are also crucial for India while tackling the perpetual nuisance, Pakistan. From West Asia to South Asia, there is a renewed push by Delhi to secure the neighborhood from growing challenges. A renewed effort to strengthen the strategic backyard, and a strong message for China and Pakistan to mend their ways. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Winds of change in West Asia are gaining speed. New alliances are being forged with each passing day. We have discussed this before. Countries that were enemies for decades are now growing closer. First, the UAE and Bahrain signed a peace deal with Israel. Now there are reports of warming relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. The growing proximity between Gulf nations and Israel has left Jordan alarmed. Jordan is now scrambling to affirm its custodianship of one of Islam's holiest sites, which it fears might be in play. I am talking about the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Jordan fears that the fate of this mosque could be up for grabs as Israel and Saudi Arabia grow closer. The Foreign Ministry of Jordan says attempts are being made to alter the historical and legal status quo of the mosque. Let me simplify this for you. Al-Aqsa Mosque, located in the old city of Jerusalem, is the third holiest site in Islam after the shrines in Mecca and Medina. Until 1967, the Waqf Ministry of Jordan held control of the mosque. Since then, Israel has claimed sovereignty of the mosque, but granted partial custodianship to Jordanian and Palestinian authorities. And this is where things get interesting. Jordan fears that the Trump administration, along with Israel, may be quote-unquote tempted to offer the Al-Aqsa Mosque as a centerpiece of a normalization deal. It fears Riyadh may be granted control of the third holiest site in Islam, along with several others. Let me quote now from a statement by Jordan's foreign ministry. The kingdom will continue its efforts to protect and care for the mosque and preserve the rights of all the Muslims to it in compliance with the Hashemite custodianship of Jerusalem's Muslim and Christian holy sites, unquote. Reports say the statement followed a phone call between Jordan's King Abdullah II and US President-elect Joe Biden. According to the Israeli media, Biden apparently suggested his eagerness for a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. The significance and the timing of this phone call cannot be downplayed. Earlier this week, there were reports of a secret meeting between Benjamin Netanyahu and the Saudi Crown Prince. Netanyahu is said to have traveled all the way to Saudi Arabia for the meeting in the presence of U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The Saudi Foreign Ministry denied that the meeting ever took place. But when Benjamin Netanyahu was asked about this, he neither confirmed nor denied the reports.
Mr. Prime Minister, we heard you visited abroad, Saudi Arabia. That's the news we heard.
Are you serious? Friends, throughout my years, I have never commented on such things. And I don't intend to start doing so now. I can only tell you that really, throughout my years as the Prime Minister, I did not save any effort to strengthen the state of Israel and to expand the circle of peace. And thank God, we have managed to do it with our neighbors, with the Emirates, with Bahrain, with Sudan, and I hope this circle will always expand.
I hope the circle will always expand. That's what Netanyahu said. Jordan believes it might just. It fears that the Al-Aqsa Mosque could be in play as the Trump administration tries to secure a regional legacy in its dying weeks. And if the fears turn out to be true, the move could dwarf the impact of the peace deals signed between Israel, the UAE and Bahrain. Saudi Arabia claims to be the de facto leader of the Islamic world. Custodianship of the Al-Aqsa Mosque would make Saudi Arabia's claim even more indispensable. Jordan has raised the possibility that this could happen. It won't be long before we possibly see other Islamic countries like Turkey and Pakistan join the bandwagon. Now, here's a count that we have done way too many times on this show. It has been 24 days since the US election, over 2 weeks since Joe Biden was declared the president-elect, and just days since Donald Trump cleared the way for Joe Biden to take over. But we know how badly Donald Trump hates losing. He has given the term sore loser a whole new meaning, so much so that he was living in denial for the longest time. For weeks, US President Donald Trump floated conspiracy theories about how the election was stolen. He spread fake news about electoral fraud. But guess what? Trump may have finally come closest to accepting defeat. Listen to what he said.
Just to be clear, if the Electoral College votes for Joe Biden, will you concede?
Well, if they do, they made a mistake, because this election was a fraud. Just so you understand, this election was a fraud. Between you people, don't talk to me that way. You're just a lightweight. Don't talk to me that way. I'm the president of the United States. Don't ever talk to the president that way. All right, I'm going to go with another question. Go ahead.
So if the Electoral College does elect President-elect Joe Biden, are you not going to leave this building?
Just so you, certainly I will. Certainly I will. And you know that.
That Donald Trump was on his way out is something that you and I have known for a while now. But what next? I am not talking about the Biden presidency. My question here is about what next for Donald Trump. Will he embrace a backstage role like President Barack Obama? Will he go on to win Grammys like Bill Clinton? Will he go back to reality television? Not like the last 4 years were anything less than reality TV. Or will Donald Trump carve out a role for himself best suited to his idiosyncrasies? Donald Trump won 70 million votes in the recent presidential election. That is more than what he won in 2016 and more than any incumbent president has won in American history. There's a large number of Americans who still believe in him, who believe in Trump's claim of electoral fraud. There is a large chunk of Americans seeing nothing wrong in the white supremacy or racism or the border wall. Trump is not going to let his supporter base go to waste. So what will he do after leaving the White House? We tried looking for answers, and here's what we found.
I may never have to come back here again if I don't get out. I'll never be back. You understand that, Kim? I may never have to come back here again. I lose Minnesota, I'm never coming back. I don't care. I'm never coming back. If I win, I know I'm coming back. If I lose, yeah, maybe not. If I lose, I'm going to be so angry at Florida. Oh, I'll still love you, I think. Maybe not. If I lose to him, I don't know what I'm going to do. I will never speak to you again. You'll never see me again. Can you imagine if I lose my whole life? What am I going to do? I'm not going to feel so good. Maybe I'll have to leave the country. I don't know.
Donald Trump certainly knows better than to leave the country. So there's no way any of that is coming true. Instead, here is what Trump could be looking to do after leaving the White House. Number one, remain active in politics. Number two, work towards a 2024 comeback. So it is neither Obama nor Bill Clinton. Trump is likely to go the Grover Cleveland way. He would aim 2 non-consecutive terms. But Trump's approach will be very different from Cleveland, who was America's 22nd president but lost his rerun despite winning the popular vote. Cleveland then ran the next for office again and went on to become the 24th president of America. Donald Trump lost the popular vote to Biden. He did not win the popular votes in 2016 either. But Trump is not waiting until leaving the White House to get cracking on 2024. Talks about Donald Trump running for presidency in 2024 began the moment trends started pointing a Biden victory. In the latest, the president has said that he will be heading to Georgia to support the state Republican Senate candidates ahead of the runoff election that is scheduled for the 5th of January. According to a Washington Post report, Donald Trump could announce his 2024 run as early as the year end. And if that is true, you would have an outgoing president announcing his election run even before the next president has taken over. Like I said, Trump will walk his own unique path, and that's exactly what his followers or the followers of Trumpism want. Georgia is just the start. Speculation in the American media pointing towards chances of Donald Trump conducting campaign-style rallies across America. He is likely to go around criticizing Biden and the Democrats. This will get him attention and money, and Donald Trump loves both. The issue of Scottish independence is back in the headlines. The First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, has issued a warning to the UK. She has sought an independence referendum at the earliest. What happened the last time such a referendum was held? Why has the issue surfaced yet again? And will the UK hold another referendum? This and more in our next report.
The United Kingdom is still grappling with the impact of Brexit. And this message from Scotland might add to the worries of the British government.
I think the referendum, for a whole variety of reasons, should be in the earlier part of the next Parliament. I'm not going to sit here right now. I intend to say more about this before the election in our manifesto.
First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon!
This was Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, who has issued an independence warning to the UK.
The Scotland we seek is open, welcoming.
Sturgeon has said that a Scottish independence referendum should take place as soon as the British Parliament's next term begins in 2021. The referendum could further break the UK apart, and Scotland is unlikely to give in this time.
As we come out of that pandemic, and this will be true of all countries, but there are particular aspects of this in Scotland's case, there are questions all of us have to ask. What kind of countries, societies do we want to be as we emerge from the pandemic?
The United Kingdom consists of England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. The central government is based in London, while each country has a degree of political autonomy to deal with domestic affairs. They also have a unique culture, language and flag. In recent years, Scotland has been pushing for independence from this union. In 2014, it even held a referendum to leave the UK.
I'm fed up with the Westminster government because of the poverty and all that round about the areas. So that's how I'm voting yes.
But the campaign fell flat. 55% of the Scottish population rejected the idea. It has been 6 years since the vote was held. And the demand for independence has once again become the dominant issue in Scottish politics. A number of recent polls have suggested rising support for Scottish independence. A poll held by Ipsos Mori in October showed 58% of Scots in favour of a breakaway, while only 42% were in favour of staying in the Union. This is the biggest lead in a poll ever recorded for the pro-independence side. So what explains this support? Observers say it has a lot to do with the rising popularity of Nicola Sturgeon. Since health is a devolved issue in the UK, Sturgeon has been taking most of the big decisions on how to respond to the pandemic. She has been the face of Scotland's response, and many Scots believe she has done a better job than Boris Johnson in England.
A lifelong believer and campaigner for, advocate for independence, but right now I'm also the First Minister of Scotland, and my responsibility is to the health and the well-being of the country in trying to steer it through a pandemic, and I'm very focused on that.
In 6 months from now, Scotland will head to the polls. The election to the Scottish Parliament is expected to take place in May. The Scottish National Party, led by Nicola Sturgeon, is expected to perform strongly. Sturgeon's game plan is to use the election victory as a mandate for another independence referendum.
Presented by our scientists suggests that
the groundwork has begun. A full-fledged campaign will follow soon. But will the UK government agree to another referendum? There is no easy answer to this question. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
The Taiwan Parliament is no stranger to brawls, fist fights, punches, even water balloons. We have seen it all. In the latest, Taiwan's legislators were seen throwing pig intestines at each other. Our next report gets you the details of what is being called a pig fight.
Pig guts was seen flying in the Taiwanese parliament. Some of it landed on lawmakers too, while some lawmakers landed on the floor themselves, while others exchanged blows. What has made these leaders so unhappy?
When you were in the opposition, you were against US pork. Now that you're in power, you've become a supporter of US pork.
The government of President Tsai Ing-wen has lifted a long-standing ban on US pork and beef. The announcement was made in August, and the ban will be lifted starting the 1st of January. The opposition has been protesting for the last few months. What is the problem, you ask? This. US pigs are fed with ractopamine. It is an additive that promotes growth in animals. It also makes them consume less food and makes them leaner. This helps farmers save money. Well, what's wrong with ractopamine then? The drug is linked to cardiovascular issues in humans. It is reportedly banned in 160 countries, including EU nations and China. According to one report, at least 1,700 people have been poisoned from ractopamine-fed pigs since 1998. So now you get what the pig fight is about. Health reasons aside, Taiwan's opposition leaders say that the import of American pork will kill the domestic market. Like you just heard, President Tsai Ing-wen's party, the DPP, or the Democratic Progressive Party, had campaigned heavily against US pork when in opposition. What then made the party change its mind? Ractopamine is critical to the growing US-Taiwan ties. The United States has made it clear that restrictions on US pork and beef are hurdles on the road to a trade deal between Taipei and Washington. And as Taiwan increasingly distances itself from China, there is no way it can risk getting into America's bad books. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
A man who embodied the spirit and resolve of a country. Argentines bid a tearful goodbye to football legend Diego Maradona. This is his final journey.
They gathered in their thousands, young and old alike, to pay tribute to a man who defined the soul and the spirit. in his honor as they waited outside the presidential palace in Buenos Aires for one last glimpse. It was a day when COVID-19 restrictions were ignored as Argentina came together as one to mourn one of its greatest sons. For some, the waiting was too much. They needed to see their God, and patience wasn't a virtue. Police at times were forced to fire water cannons and rubber bullets. But they still did not go away. Finally, they lined the roads leading to the Bella Vista Cemetery on the outskirts of Buenos Aires. Diego Maradona was known for his speed and his mazy runs through crowded defences. On his final journey, it was a slow cavalcade with a hearse carrying his body, accompanied by police vehicles and a sea of cars and motorbikes. Maradona was laid to rest beside his parents in a private ceremony with just close family and friends in attendance. Argentina's symbol of excellence was no more, but for his beloved Argentines, the memories will last forever.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas, leaving you as always with Gravitas images. Thanks for watching.